Well, you have caught us at the very end of Conference Live. We are wrapping up a two-day fiesta of technology. We have had an amazing conference, a conference that really stands out in my mind this year. There just seems to be some sort of energy that is present here. Tom Shircliff, Rob Murchison from Intelligent Buildings. Tell me first, before we begin, do you see what I'm talking about? Do you know what I mean? Do you sense a slight super energy to this year's conference?
Yeah, I feel like the adoption of the smarter approach is accelerating. We see that each year.
Yeah.
But this year, I think we're seeing a trajectory it's going a bit higher, and I think this whole atmosphere and being in Vegas, there's a lot of energy around that as well.
Absolutely. How about you?
I think that energy also comes from the real estate owners that are walking around are not asking what is that and how does it work. They're saying, I'm ready to fix my problems, I'm ready to do something.
Yeah.
They're really talking about real estate applications and scenarios.
And is it me, or does it seem like there's a lot more investment money available for some of this technology?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because we were chatting about this earlier. There is more, if you categorically look at the money that's venture money versus production and operational capital dollars, there's a shift of the money going from the operational side of the house. It's no longer at-risk dollars. This is just the way we're going to do it. And as Tom referred to, there's much more of a conversation around what's the business value that we're going to get to it. And I'm going to do the technology. Let's just make sure we do the right pieces of technology, because that's the only way I can solve my problems.
Yeah.
We heard the CBRE CEO also say in the general session that they were going to commit not to just use technology and have technology, but to make it part of their DNA and part of the way they do business. And we're seeing building owners say the same thing. It's not just experimenting or grabbing a system or looking at one ROI in one building. We're going to build and operate buildings on the smart building principles and technologies.
Which is very much the way that you operate at Intelligent Buildings. It seems to be a much more holistic approach. Can you speak about that?
Sure. What we have seen, been coming to this conference since it began, is that the problem has come from one that's just a technology issue to one where the technology's there, but there's change you have to deal with, right? And so when we look at the problem holistically, we see a technology issue both from the IT and the OT, the operational technology, but then the people side of things.
Right.
And it's those components that enable the use cases that the business folks want to be able to achieve from the technology.
And when you talk about the holistic picture, one mistake that was made early in the smart buildings movement was just buying technology and thinking that was going to do it. Whether you had a use case or not.
Yeah.
And what was left out was the workflow around that and how you're actually going to do the business. And we do something called playbooks, right? So you're getting this new technology, or we satisfied this use case, and now there's got to be a playbook.
Right.
How we actually execute that.
Now, did you always do playbooks, or were playbooks something that evolved from watching?
It's really an evolution. So all of us in the beginning of this movement, Realcomm's 20 years old. It was so exciting to have technology that you could do some things with, and people got excited and started employing that and learning by mistakes. But then when it started to become part of the way you do business versus just an extraneous tool, you had to put workflow around it. We used to call it organizational alignment.
Right.
It's just a different way of saying we've got to work around the technology, or work with the technology.
Given your wealth and depth of experience, one question I have for both of you is, now that you've seen how to get people to adopt change, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? What's one of the big secrets?
It sounds funny.
Yeah.
But you got to start with your goals.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about the technology. It's about what are your organizational goals. So when we go into and our customers are large real estate portfolio owners. When you go into a large real estate portfolio owners, getting the group of stakeholders, which is growing now because the technology is just not impacting the facilities guys, and it's just not impacting the IT guys, it's impacting marketing, it's impacting legal around cybersecurity risks. It's a lot larger group. What are the goals of all those stakeholders? And by narrowing those goals down to the core business values, you get a shared purpose among that group.
That's really a good point, because one thing we observed as recently as a couple of years ago, people tried to define smart buildings
Yeah.
as more sustainable, more productive, more safe, and all this kind of stuff. And we looked at it and we went, that's what real estate organizations are trying to do already.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so just like any other industry segment, we said, no, smart buildings are really doing what you're trying to do already, just faster, cheaper, and with less risk.
Right.
That's what IT does in any other business.
Right.
So put aside the strained definitions and get to what you're doing using technology to leverage you there faster and cheaper with less risk.
Speaking of the risk side of the equation, there's a lot of benefit that comes from having all these smarter systems, but what we're also seeing is a higher awareness around the risk that is associated with all the devices that are in these buildings,
Yes.
whether you're doing a use case approach or not. We're definitely seeing an increase on wanting to figure out, how do I figure out my posture around building control cybersecurity?
It seems like one of the things we've been discussing up here is the need for a very ongoing, constantly being updated and reevaluated cybersecurity strategy. What are you guys seeing as a big part of this conference, in addition to what we've been talking about so far, AI and cybersecurity? What are your observations?
Well, cybersecurity is interesting because everybody knows cybersecurity from credit card hacks and HR records and all these kind of things. When it comes to building control systems, HVAC, elevator, lighting, metering, etc., historically no one's been in charge of the cybersecurity of those things.
Yeah.
IT stopped at the VPN
Yeah.
or the corporate network at best. And so what we're finding is, because nobody's historically been in charge of it, they don't even really know what's there,
Right.
how it was connected, who connected it, what's connected to the internet. So what we're doing lots of, even for very sophisticated real estate organizations, are just assessments. The cybersecurity assessment
Yeah.
of a lot of buildings, and then we can start down a remediation path.
Yeah, the cybersecurity piece, the reality is that buildings became digital in the late 80s, right? And the DDC systems, and those became put into the world, and no one was thinking about that. Then along comes the internet.
Right.
And now we have digital systems in the internet. Now we're in 2018 and the average building is over 50 years old. We go into buildings that have Windows Me running in the computer, right? And they can't change that because the building will stop running.
Yeah.
With a DSL line and a Best Buy router.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the first step is evaluating what the assets are, right? So what are the devices, right? And in today's world, so it's like your lights, your elevator, people's handhelds are a part of that landscape. So how do you once you get the audit done, then what do you do?
Well, there's a little bit more to the audit. So we identify the assets,
Yeah.
but each one of those assets you can think of as an appliance, right? And those appliances have individual configuration files that are on that. So getting your arms around what each of those configuration files, it's very common for us to see the password is user,
Sure.
right? Username, password, that
Yes.
type of thing. Or it taped on the box, user, password, name, and there's never been a systematic way for a lot of folks to look at cybersecurity.
And that makes the point that, even to your point about what do we do next, is when we see those kind of things, of course we want to fix that, but it really isn't going to matter unless you develop new policy and requirements for your contractors.
Right.
As soon as you fix it, if you don't have a contractual policy for how they must operate in your building, then it's just going to happen over and over again. And also, to your point about ongoing, you got to go back and check on that.
Yeah.
Periodically, and we can do that. We monitor and check on that as well.
So now this gets into how construction has to get deeply involved in the process, right? Because we have to make them partners in this, and it feels like from the conversations I've been having, there's still a bit of a bifurcation between the contractor and the planner, right?
Really good point.
So,
and what's interesting to your point is that an increasing, when we talked to you, say 3 years ago, our customers were in the majority on the facility side and the construction side. In the last, I would say, 12 months or so, it has shifted to the CIO. So now the CIO is in the conversation at the construction side of the beginning of the construction process.
and
Which is a good thing.
It's
a
a
very
great
good
thing, and we've also actually developed new services that we hadn't had before because of that. Think about this, in a new building now, we're doing cyber commissioning for the control system. Everybody's familiar with commissioning a new building, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that it's true to its design and specifications. Now we're doing cyber commissioning for new buildings
Okay.
to make sure it comes online properly.
Interesting. I spoke to Harry from Singapore. Harry,
Dr. Harry?
Dr. Harry, yeah.
And he was talking about this concept. We're going a little bit further because we're also waiting for Jim to show. He was talking about the concept of the digital twin.
Yeah.
This idea that the planning up front should match the actual unit built. And he was talking about how what his company is doing is basically manufacturing rather than building, manufacturing these buildings. Are you starting to see that trend?
That concept is the way it should be.
Yeah.
There are people like Dr. Harry that are doing that the right way from the beginning. The challenge is with a lot of these owners that we have here, the commercial building stock in the U.S. is what,
87 billion square feet.
billion
Just in the
square
US.
feet. So we like that, and we're looking forward, and we're actually encouraging that. But meanwhile, we've got 87 billion square feet that are connected in sort of perilous ways.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The future is the digital twins, but there's a lot of work to be done with the technology that is mainstream today.
Okay.
That is the future, and buildings that get designed, say in BIM, are much easier to run in a BIM model. But even today, buildings that are just run in BIM, 9 times out of 10, they're getting printed in 2D drawings. It's not a technology problem; it's a people. It's a people issue.
Back to that whole view you talked about earlier.
Right, that holistic thing. So given that we have a little more time to talk, what else do people need to know? What else are people missing? Something that we're not keeping our eye on? Yes, cybersecurity. Yes, use case. Yes, all of these things. But what else would you wish that people would be more aware of or paying more attention to?
I think in general, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact, we've been talking about analytics and now AI, and we like to say data-driven decision-making. Don't lose sight of that big concept as we take on these important issues. That's still a concept.
And I'll take that a step further, that any organization looking at a technology-driven approach, however good the technology is, if the people don't take action on what the technology enables them to do, the decisions,
Yeah,
you won't get any benefit.
right.
So in our organization, we encourage folks to not try to bite the elephant off in one bite, right?
Right.
So you do something small with the technology and get the organization in a posture where it begins to go through a cycle and learn from that cycle versus doing something too grand. I would also encourage the idea that when you go do something with technology, it's not a pilot. It is phase 1 because you are changing the way, you're transforming the way that your organization is going to do business. And being just a pilot, it means we may go there, we may not.
And Jerry, an example of that is there's a mega trend we all know about now called co-working.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of the smart space. And as Rob says, if you're looking at space utilization, that's not a pilot. That is the beginning of a new real estate business model and a new approach to real estate. So that would be setting down a path. And this co-working concept is something that is bringing the base building and the interior space together like never before. Control systems, sensors, the way people work, millennial work habits, all of these things are now coming together, and that's really going to create a soup.
And I would also say that there's a lot of learning that is taking place in what we're seeing in the real estate space out of the software development world.
Okay.
And in the software development world, there's this idea called DevOps, which is development and operations happening simultaneously, right? And one of the key themes that comes out of that are two things: always learning, and a culture where it is okay. They call it a safety culture. and it's a culture where it's okay to go out there and take a risk
Yeah.
and try something
Right.
and then innovate on that.
Yes.
And the traditional real estate model of it's going to run this way and more of a command and control, it is moving from a cultural standpoint to empowering the folks to use the technology to back to us saying to take the actions when they are able to go take those actions.
Got it.
So there's a definite, I see that theme occurring.
Yeah. So the idea is, it's like there's that saying about involved versus committed,
Yep.
and bacon and eggs.
Yes,
The
exactly.
chicken is involved, the pig is committed. So you're saying get a little more committed, and at whatever level that is. But we're not experimenting. It's not a pilot. This is phase one of us beginning to enter a world of technology and enhanced data, recognition, and yeah.
It's a
And
journey.
it's not just incremental improvements, as we talked about. This is a new real estate model, new expectations, new experiences. I mean, when the WeWorks of the world are disintermediating the landlord from the actual customer,
Yeah.
the landlord now thinks about services more,
Yeah.
a better work experience more, so that they can get back in touch with that customer.
Terrific. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Always love talking to you.
A lot of fun.
Tom, thank you very much.